They mocked her. They called her barren. But Yemi's spirit did not wither. With nothing in her hands but the pure strength of love, kindness, and goodwill, she rose to influence in the community, not as the mother of any child, but as the mother of an entire community. In a world that bows before the powerful and forgets the lowly, Yemi proved that true motherhood is not bound to just the reproductive exploits of the womb, but flows from the fountains of a good heart. Yemi showed that, indeed, true motherhood is more of humanity than biology, the courage to nurture, the will to heal, and the grace to lift others, even amid challenging circumstances. This is not just a tale of moonlight, it is a living legacy of love, healing, and quiet power. Yemi's heartfelt actions transformed ridicule into respect, neglect into reverence, and a forgotten woman into a shining beacon of hope whose light will guide generations yet unborn. Once upon a time, in the ancient Yoruba Kingdom of Araromi, there lived a beautiful young woman named Yemi. Though her womb bore no child, she wore virtue as a fine cloth, her wrapper draped with quiet dignity, as if it had been woven by the careful hands of the gods themselves. Her braided hair, adorned with glistening amber beads, caught the sunlight like tiny blessings from heaven. Wherever she went, her virtue touched and uplifted the hearts of all who crossed her path. Yemi is proof that a woman's beauty is not just an attribute of her killer body curves, pretty face, and cosmetic makeup. Her beauty was so outstanding among the women of Araromi that one can easily think that she is not just human but an angel dwelling amongst men. Her life, to the eyes of many, seemed perfect and admirable. Yet, one thing was missing: the sweet cry of a baby had never been heard in her home. Though she was known for her kind heart and thoughtful deeds toward her neighbors and the wider community, there were those, especially among the women, who mocked her for her childlessness. They whispered cruel judgments, as if her misfortune were punishment for an unseen atrocity she had committed in her mother's womb. But they knew nothing of the true reason for her barrenness. When Yemi walked through the village, some would call her names to suit her childless condition. "She is not woman enough," they scoffed. Others went further, falsely branding her a witch. Their words were harsh and cutting, striking her heart like thorns, yet she carried herself with quiet dignity, refusing to let their cruelty steal her grace. Femi, Yemi's husband, was a man who paid no mind to gossip. He stood by her with the steadfastness of an Iroko tree, unmoved by the winds of whispers and mockery thrown at her. "Children or not," he would say, "Yemi is the one who softens my life and makes it whole. Without her, my house is nothing but an empty shell of walls. With her, it is the sweetest home in the world." Whenever anyone dared to mock Yemi, Femi met them with words of tender love and unshakable respect. He made it clear to all that their bond was strong, rooted deep, and untouched by the poison of idle talk. Even when family and friends urged him to take another wife capable of bearing children for him, Femi would smile and shake his head in disapproval. To him, Yemi was priceless, worth more in his heart than 10 children could ever be. As if individual persecutions were not enough, a group of heartless individuals in the village swore to make life difficult for Yemi, despite her innocence. These people kept fabricating and spreading false accusations to get her banished from the community. At village gatherings, when the drums thundered and laughter danced through the air in communal celebrations, Yemi's name was rarely called, her seat intentionally left empty, as her presence was quietly unwelcome. Yemi's absence was always felt, not because she intentionally chose to stay away, but because she was never truly welcomed, courtesy of people who hate to see her happy. Though a section of the villagers tried to close their hearts to others against Yemi because of her childless condition, Yemi's own heart remained open, soft, and pure to everyone. Yet, Yemi refused to let this forced loneliness break her spirit. She found solace in life's quiet corners, in the gentle peace of her thoughts, in the silence of her solitude, and in the unwavering companionship of her loving husband Femi. She built a secret sanctuary within herself and her home, a place of strength that no gossip, no rejection, and no prejudice could ever destroy. That wise decision inspired Yemi to walk with quiet dignity, her head held high, her steps graceful as if guided by an unseen strength. To get an answer to her prayers and lighten her burden, Yemi always visits natural sites and worship centers to have a heart-to-heart communion with the gods, to ask them questions concerning her condition. By the riverbank, Yemi sat in silence, her gaze resting on the slow, steady flow of the water. The river's song was gentle, soft as a mother's lullaby, and it soothed the heavy weight in her heart. Each ripple seemed to carry a fragment of her soul, her secret prayers, her quiet dreams, and the burdens she dared not speak aloud. She watched the current drift away, as if it bore her shame and sorrow into the distance, and with every returning wave, it brought whispers of hope, new dreams, and the promise of brighter days. What she didn't know was that the calmness she was enjoying in peaceful surroundings was going to be interrupted in no time. Suddenly, Yemi heard a faint cry carried by the wind. She looked up and saw a strange old woman struggling in the shallow water. Her wrapper was tangled in the reeds, and the strong current was pulling her down. Without thinking twice, Yemi ran into the river. The cold water splashed against her legs as she reached for the woman's trembling arms and pulled her free from the trap of the reeds. Slowly, she led her to the shore. Thinking about what could be her fate if not for the timely rescue intervention of Yemi. The old woman quietly sat on the ground, breathing heavily, her eyes shining with gratitude. Then, without a word, she reached into the riverbed, scooped a handful of wet sand, and placed it gently in Yemi's palm. "My daughter," the woman said in a soft, deep voice, "count the grains of sand in your hand, and tell me how many there are." Yemi looked down in surprise. "I cannot count them, Mama," she replied. The old woman smiled. "As you cannot count these grains of sand, so shall your children be uncountable upon the earth. For saving my life, heaven has seen your kindness and will answer your cry today. Go home with joy, wipe away your tears, for soon, your arms will no longer be empty." As she spoke, a gentle breeze rose from the river and wrapped itself around Yemi like a warm embrace. She did not fully understand the meaning of the woman's words, but hope began to bloom quietly in her heart. From that moment, her life had begun to turn around. Children were drawn to her gentle and kind nature like never before. They gathered around her in the village square or under the shade of a tree. With a warm smile, she told them stories of the old days, tales of brave hunters, wise queens, and talking animals. She also taught them songs, clapping her hands to the rhythm as their young voices rose in harmony. The children laughed, sang, and clapped along, their joy filling the air. Their laughter echoed through the village, spreading happiness to anyone who heard it. Though she had no child of her own, Yemi had become a mother in the hearts of many, and the blessing from the river was quietly at work in her life. She began to see an even deeper purpose for her life. To give meaning to the lives of those children who took her as a mother figure, Yemi started teaching the young girls in the village the crafts and skills she had learned from her mother and grandmother. Under the shade of a wide mango tree or in the cool space of her small courtyard, she showed them how to weave baskets from palm fronds, how to pound yams until it was smooth as silk, and how to sew wrappers with careful, even stitches. But she did not stop at teaching hands alone, she also taught the mind and heart. Yemi also taught them morals. She spoke to them about honesty, patience, and the importance of kindness. She told them that beauty was not only in the face but in the way a person treated others. Gradually, her home became more than just a place to sleep. It instantly turned into a haven, a safe space where laughter was free, where learning was joyful, and where love was always in the air. Mothers trusted her with their daughters, knowing that time spent with Yemi was time well invested. And though Yemi still longed for a child of her own, she found comfort in the many young faces that surrounded her. She didn't know it yet, but the blessing she had been promised by the river was slowly weaving itself into her life in ways she could not yet imagine. One quiet evening, Yemi sat outside her home, watching the children of the village play in the dusty street. Their bare feet kicked up little clouds of earth, their laughter ringing like music in the warm air. She smiled, and without realizing it, a single tear rolled down her cheek. It was not a tear of sorrow, no. It was a tear of hope. For in that moment, she saw not what she lacked, but what she had been given, the gift of love to share, the gift of nurturing hearts that were not born from her womb, yet still belonged to her. When she heard of children who had lost their parents, she opened her doors without hesitation. Her small home, once quiet and still, now overflowed with life. She sheltered them from the rain, food to fill their bellies, and stories to warm their nights. More than anything, she gave them a mother's love, gentle, patient, and enduring care. Those children began to call her Aya Yemi, meaning Mama Yemi. The name spread through the village, carrying with it the sound of laughter that now filled her home. Her heart swelled each time she heard it, for in their voices she had the family she had always dreamed of. Slowly, the people of Araromi began to see her differently. Those who had once whispered about her childlessness now spoke of her kindness. The same eyes that had once looked on her with pity or scorn began to look on her with respect. Even the elders nodded at her in approval, recognizing the quiet strength she had always carried. And though she still remembered the old woman's blessing by the river, Yemi now understood something deeper. Sometimes, the answer to a prayer comes in a form more beautiful than we ever imagined. Yemi's new dimension of family growth made some people, especially those who mocked her, to become jealous. Some of them still held on to their old beliefs. They could not understand how Yemi, who had been childless for so long, now had numerous children in her home and enormous joy in her heart. Whispers began to spread, accusing her of using sorcery to attract children's love and attention. They said the blessing she received by the river must have come from dark powers. But they did not see the truth, that it was the kindness in her heart and the love she gave so freely that brought blessings into her life. These people went to the extent of reporting Yemi to the village elders in council. On the day she was summoned to clear her name from those allegations, Femi, her husband, was there to intercede on her behalf. He stood tall before the circle of elders, the afternoon sun casting long shadows on the village square. His voice was steady, his eyes fierce with determination. He spoke from his heart, telling of Yemi's goodness, her kindness to the old and the young, and the truth of her pure heart. The elders listened in silence, their faces unreadable, as Femi's words rose like the steady beat of a talking drum. He did not waver, for he knew he was speaking for what was right. In that moment, his courage was like a flame, burning bright against the cold winds of doubt. Yemi remained steadfast amid unfounded accusations, standing like the Iroko tree that does not bend to the storm. Her spirit was unyielding, refusing to be broken by harsh words or cruel whispers. Yet her heart stayed open, wide as the river in the rainy season, ready to give love and kindness to all who came near. She carried her pain quietly, turning it into strength, and in her gentle smile was the courage of 1,000 unshed tears. She didn't allow anything whatsoever to slow down her goodwill to her people. In the busy market, Yemi helped the elderly people carry their goods and find what they needed. She spoke to them gently and smiled warmly. Every action she took showed her kindness, from the way she held their hands to the way she listened to them patiently. Everyone was amazed by Yemi's kind heart despite persecution. When illness struck the village, Yemi moved from hut to hut, carrying bowls of herbal medicine and cool water. She washed fevered brows, fed the weak with her own hands, and spoke softly to calm troubled hearts. Day and night, she stayed by their sides, her compassion never wavering, her patience never fading. Even when her own body grew tired, her spirit remained strong, like the steady flame of a lantern in the darkest night. Her knowledge of herbs and remedies was a gift passed down from the wise women before her. She knew which leaves could cool a fever, which roots could ease a cough, and which flowers could bring rest to a weary soul. With gentle hands, she prepared her medicines, grinding, boiling, and mixing them with care. When she touched the sick, it was as if her palms carried the blessing of the ancestors, soothing pain, calming fear, and bringing comfort even before the healing began. When a neighbor gave birth, Yemi was always the first to arrive. She would step quietly into the hut, her presence as calming as the evening breeze after a hot day. With gentle hands, she wiped the sweat from the mother's brow, whispering words of strength and encouragement. When the baby's first cry filled the air, Yemi's face lit up with pure joy, as though the child were her own. When a child fell ill, Yemi became a pillar of comfort and strength. She would sit beside the little one, her hands cool against their fevered skin, humming lullabies that seemed to chase away the shadows of sickness. With knowledge passed down from her mothers before her, she brewed herbal remedies from leaves, roots, and bark, filling the air with the healing fragrance of the earth. Slowly, gratitude began to replace the suspicion that once clouded the hearts of the villagers. They saw Yemi's tireless care, her gentle ways, and her willingness to help even those who had spoken against her. One by one, they came forward, tendering apologies, offering her gifts, and helping hand. Their harsh judgments faded like mist under the morning sun, replaced by deep respect. The children, who once watched her from a distance, now ran to her with laughter, speaking of her kindness in their games and stories. Under the shade of the great Iroko tree, the elders called a meeting, and it was agreed a monument would be built in honor of Yemi. They asked her what she wanted, and she said a school to teach children properly. With the full support of the community, Yemi began her most ambitious project, the building of a school so that every child, no matter their family's wealth or name, could learn. Men brought wood and clay, women wove mats for the floors, and the youth carried stones and water. Each day, the sound of hammers and voices rang through the air, not as noise, but as the music of a people building their future. When at last the school was finished, it stood proudly at the edge of the village, a simple modern building with strong walls, wide windows, and a roof that seemed to smile under the sun. On the day of the opening, the whole village gathered in celebration. Drums rolled, dancers toured in bright fabrics, and children, dressed in their best, clapped their hands with excitement. The air was thick with joy and the smell of cooking, as laughter floated from one end of the square to the other. The elders called Yemi forward, their voices full of honor, and named her the matron of the school, a role that was more than a title, but recognition of her heart for the youth. They spoke of her tireless work, her dreams for the children, and her belief that knowledge could break chains of ignorance. As Yemi stood there, the children surrounded her, holding her hands and smiling up at her as if she were the mother of them all. In that moment, she knew the school was not just a building, it was a promise to the future, and she was its keeper. Many seasons passed, and the school Yemi had built continued to shape young minds. One bright morning, a visitor arrived in the village, a tall, confident young man dressed in fine clothes that spoke of success far beyond their small community. The villagers gathered, curious, and soon realized he was one of the very first students to sit on the mats in Yemi's school. His name was Rotemai, and he had traveled from the city, where he had become a respected leader. Standing before the elders and the crowd, Rotemai bowed his head to Yemi. His voice was thick with emotion as he spoke. "Mama Yemi," he said, using the name all the children had given her, "everything I am today, I owe to the lessons you gave me, not just in books, but in life. You taught me to work hard, to care for others, and to never forget my roots. You believed in me when I did not believe in myself." His words carried through the air, and many in the crowd felt their eyes grow wet. Yemi listened quietly, her heart swelling with both pride and humility. She knew that her work had not ended when the children left the school, it had continued in the choices they made, in the kindness they showed, and in the lives they touched. Through them, her teachings walked far beyond the borders of the village. Her legacy had become part of the very fabric of the community, stitched into its songs, its stories, and its way of life. And in that moment, she understood that true impact is not measured by what we keep, but by what we leave in the hearts of others. Yemi's journey stands as a story the village will tell for generations, a story that teaches us that kindness is stronger than prejudice, and that a heart willing to nurture can heal even the deepest wounds of a community. She showed that love does not need to be loud to be powerful, and that gentle hands can rebuild what hatred tries to destroy. Through her life, we learn that it is not the size of our strength, but the depth of our compassion, that truly changes the world around us. Her days were a living lesson, each act of service a seed planted in the hearts of others, seeds that grew into unity, trust, and hope. And just as our compassion transformed her village, so too can ours touch the lives around us, no matter where we are. May we all walk with the patience she carried, speak with the kindness she gave, and serve with the love she lived. For in doing so, we keep her spirit alive, and we, too, become builders of peace and healers of hearts. If Yemi's journey touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Audacity Folktales. Stay tuned, we have more stories rooted in the tapestry of rich African heritage.